Well, welcome everybody. As Jen said, we're very excited to have you all here with us today and to be able to give you a sneak peek of some of the new features and functionality that came out in Acumatica's 25 R2 version. What you can expect today is a bit of an overview on Acumatica's new modern UI. Woohoo, it is here. They've been talking about it for a couple of years, and it has now, the new modern UI has been released to the general public. It is available once you upgrade to 25R2. So we'll be taking a peek at that modern UI and how that has affected your interaction with dashboards and different screens and generic inquiries. And when I say has affected these areas of the system, it is in a very good and positive way. We're also going to spend some time diving into Acumatica's AI features. AI, right? That's a buzzword that is out there. I think every business is evaluating how they can implement and utilize AI in their business. So we're going to give you some food for thought on how you can start utilizing what is currently available in Acumatica when it comes to AI, as well as just some takeaways as to what you can also expect in the future. That's another large topic that we're going to explore. And then we have just some small general features throughout the system that we're going to look at relating to some project stuff and Acumatica payment improvements and some just general improvements on the AR side of things. So that's kind of what to expect today. If you would like a full release note documentation, we can give that to you. It's great reading material in your downtime time. It's 200 to 300 pages long, but full of such good information that you can kind of sift through so that you can see what additional new features, right, can be applied to your business. All right, so we're going to start here with what I have up on my screen, which is the controller dashboard. And this is really going to be your first sneak peek into what Acumatica has done with the modern UI when it comes to dashboards. So Acumatica has given a kind of a complete overhaul on how really the widgets look. It is much more streamlined than what was there previously. I'm going to flip over to what was there previously for any new users or prospects that we might have on the call. But here's a sales manager dashboard. And this is in the old UI. I was talking to my team and I said, this version of the dashboard looks like something that, like, someone in the preschool or elementary school would love, with all these primary colors kind of screaming at you. It served its purpose, and the data was reliable and actionable, but you can see with the new modern UI, right, it is definitely has a little bit more of a sophisticated, streamlined look. You still have the same functionality that you had in the old dashboards, where dashboards are designed to bring insight and to your data, as to what's going on in the system, as well as allowing you to take action. So you can still drill into all your widgets, right? Take action on things that you're seeing. Now, one improvement that they made for any of you that have designed dashboards in the past or modified dashboards in the past, one improvement to the functionality that they made is that when you do go into your design mode, previously, if you wanted to move widgets around, it was very time consuming. There was a lot of reordering that had to be done. You couldn't just pick up a widget and insert it into the middle of a section very easily. So with the new modern UI, changing the order of how all your widgets appear is definitely much easier. So from a usability standpoint, I give that an A plus, because I'll tell you, when we work with dashboards, it was very frustrating, right? To try to move things around and not have it take a lot of time. So I'm going to go out of my design mode. All right, so again, this is kind of the view you can expect when you go to the modern UI. All of your out of the box dashboards. Acumatica does have a conversion tool. It's really just a click of a button where it can kind of take your existing dashboards and it can convert them to this view if you want to start utilizing this view when you upgrade. Now, the next area that we're going to go look at to give you a flavor of what the modern UI has done to this area of the system is we're going to look at a generic inquiry. And I'm going to move over into the payables module, and I'm going to go to the bills and adjustment generic inquiry. This is an inquiry I think probably every organization is using because everybody has payables transactions. So the first thing I want to kind of point out to you is the new way that you can configure your column layout. So there's this new little gear icon over here. This replaces that little piece of paper icon that you saw previously. When you click that gear, what it's going to show you is all the available columns or fields that you can, have available to you to add to your grid view. The selections where there's a check, those are currently being displayed. The ones where you don't see a check, those are not displayed. So for example, if I wanted to take out the currency field and maybe the original reference number, I could either search, right, for that currency field and unselect it, right? And it will pop out of my view, or I can just scroll through the list, right? Here's my currency field and I can unselect. Now, I can add columns just as easily by selecting the column name that I'm looking to add. So if I want to know who created it and when and turn those fields on, right, I can go ahead and select those and it adds those two data fields to my view. As far as reordering your columns, you still do have the drag and drop methodology that you had before. Or from your settings here, you can also drag and drop within this view to reorder your columns. So I think it's a new, quicker, easier way to be able to manage the different fields that you want to add or remove from your view. Now you still have the ability to create saved filters. I'm sure all of you who work with generic inquiries have created saved filters in the past to allow you to easily retrieve data with filters already applied. Now in the old UI, those filters were displayed as tabs going across your screen, right? In the new modern UI, those tabs have been eliminated, and you now have this drop down where you see the words all records, and you have a list of filters that you can select, right? If you go ahead and you favorite them, okay, then you will go ahead and you'll see those. So if I pick open, right, it gives me open, scheduled, and so on. So again, just I think an easier way to be able to manage those filters. You also you have the flexibility of reordering these so that if you want a specific filter to be first, you can put that at the top of your list, where again, in today's older UI, the tabs in which those saved filters appeared, you had no control over, right? It just got added to the end of the last one that was created. Now, how you create these filters, I think they've come up with a better method of doing this. Let's say I want to create a filter for all of my closed invoices. So I can start applying just regular one-time usage filters to my view, okay? And then when I click this funnel, I can say, hey, I actually want to save this. So I hit Save Filters, and it will apply whatever filters I have here at the column settings. It will apply that to my save filter. So I can just call this closed. I still have the same ability to share or mark something as a default when I do that. So now in my filters list, I have my open, closed, and scheduled. Now, as far as how you create pivots, okay, again, they've modified the terminology for that a little bit, as well as where you would go ahead and do that. So if you want to create a pivot view of your data, and I'm just going to go back to my all records, your pivots are now stored under this icon that kind of looks like a table layout. And if you want to create a pivot, you're going to use this create view function. Now, I've created two pivots already, one called AP bills by status and one called AP bills by vendor and year. So I'm going to go into my status. Okay. And again, I've got my same pivot type view that I had previously, but I can now take those shared filters that or saved filters, I should say, that I created previously, and when I select that save filter, it will automatically go ahead and refresh my pivoted view to only to include the data in that saved filter. So that's something that's new as far as being able to utilize those saved filters to filter your pivoted view very easily. If you want to get back to your table view, right, you just flip it and now you're back to really your list view. So again, they've changed a little bit how you kind of interact with the pivots, but also added some functionality for some easier filtering. Again, with the pivots, I have control over the order that I want to see them. Another thing I want to mention that applies to both your pivots and your saved filters, you can rename them. So we've seen this so many times where we'll create a save filter or a pivot and we'll call it something. And then, you'll be showing it to a group of people and they'll say, oh, can you rename that to X? And the answer previously was no. You had to delete that and you had to recreate it. So now you can actually rename both your pivot as well as your save filters view names. So I think that's another good improvement that I think a lot will be happy about. All right, so that's kind of how you would interact with generic inquiries across the system within the new modern UI. Now I'm going to jump into a screen and we're going to take a look at first what your screens are going to look like here in the new modern UI, as well as how you can personalize and interact with these. So you'll notice just in the header, and this goes for, again, any type of transactional screen or even master record screen within the system, that in the header now, they have the header data grouped into sections, right? So it's a little bit easier to read because of the different boxes, the different groupings. Now, down in the details, you still have your tabs that you had, previously, but you'll notice for your grid-like views, such as the details, that sheet of paper that you used to have where you would control your column configuration is now set to this gear that you saw on the generic inquiry. And how you interact with this is the same as what we just reviewed on the inquiry, right? Where you can add fields by selecting or removing fields by unselecting. Okay. And then reordering is what we reviewed in the generic inquiry, how you would reorder your fields. Okay. So they've applied that same logic that we looked at in the generic inquiry really to any grid-like view within Acumatica, whether, like I said, be a transaction or a grid within some sort of master record. Now, I can go ahead and I can personalize this screen, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, in a lot of cases, we'll be doing implementations and we'll be working with customers and they'll say to us, you know what? We don't need to see this field. This field isn't relevant to the business. It's just something else for our employees to have to tab through, for our users to have to tab through. Can you get rid of that field for me? And sure, yeah, we can do that, but that requires some technical skill, which is usually a consultant, right, that they're reaching out to here at Cal. And it requires us to have to do that through a customization package and go through a publish after hours because it takes down your system. Acumatica has now given us the ability, as well as you, that's the beauty of this. Really gives you the ability to personalize these screens and decide whether or not you want to push these personalizations out to everybody, just a group of people, or yourself, right from within this form without having to write any code or have any sort of customization projects. So to do that, you would come up to this gear here in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you would make your go to the screen configuration selection. Now, when I do that, that's going to enable a gear, right, in each of the different sections on the screen. So let's say I want to get rid of this joint payees selection. This isn't something we're going to be utilizing, right, as a company. I want to take that out of my user's view. All I need to do is come up to the gear in that section, and I'm going to see the list of fields that are available. And where you see this little eye icon, if I just slash through it and hit apply, it removes that field now from our view once I push this out. So I'm going to say apply to all. Okay. So that's how you can easily remove fields. Now you can also remove like entire tabs. So again, if I go to my screen configuration, let's say I'm going to hit my configuration for the tab section. Let's say you're not doing anything with purchase taxes, right? So you want to hide that. Maybe you don't do anything with compliance, or you don't have discounts within your organization. I can take those visible tabs and move them down to hidden and apply that. And now that has cleaned up my view again for users. Less data for them to be able to select on, see, and potentially change. Okay. So that's how you can remove tabs and also remove specific fields. Now, you can take fields that are in one section and move them up to another, right? So a good example of this might be the payment method. Payment method is buried right into my financial tab. Let's say I want that payment method up here, right in the header section. Again, I can go to my screen configuration. I can select the section where I want to add that new field. I know that that field is found under the current document. Actually, I'm going to use batch number instead. And I'm going to stick my batch number there versus the payment method. So now I have my batch number, which again was under the financial tab, and I can have it in both places, right? Or I could actually come remove it from here. And now I can easily get to write the corresponding journal entry for this transaction right from the header. I don't have to drill into the tabs. So again, you could do that with any of those fields buried into the tabs. You can move them up to the header, or vice versa, move them down. So that's how you can shift fields around on your screen. Now I'm going to show you one more thing where you can actually add brand new fields. So I'm sure most of you who are Acumatica users are familiar with attributes, right? Attributes are basically like a field that you want to add to a screen. A lot of times you use attributes, you put them in different classes so you can control which attributes are visible depending on the class of the vendor or the customer or the item and so on. So when you're adding new fields to the screen, the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to create an attribute, which I've already queued that up, created one. It only takes about 2 minutes, but I've already done that piece. Once your attribute is created, right, you're going to come to your gear section and you're going to say, I want to manage my user-defined fields. And you're going to take that attribute, okay, and you're going to add it to this screen as a user-defined field, right? So I created, let me come over here. I created a user-defined field already. So I'm going to add that. So I basically said I want to be able to put this user-defined field on the screen, and now I'm going to go place it where I want to see it. So I'm going to go back to my screen configuration. I'm going to put it in this first block. And under user-defined fields, here's my delivery account attribute or user-defined field that I just created. Right? So this user-defined field was added for the purpose of saying basically who pays for the freight for this purchase. Was it the customer? Was it internal, us as the owner, or was it the vendor? But any additional data that you're looking to capture, right, in regards to, in this case, bills and adjustments, right, you can go ahead and you can easily create that attribute, which turns into a user-defined field, and then you place it on the screen. And now you can tag your transaction with that custom field's value. So again, probably takes 5 minutes and from beginning to end to be able to create that field and place that new field on your screen so that you can start capturing data. And then this field, right, is very easy. Let me just apply this out. If you want to start reporting on that, okay, your generic inquiry has that field available to be able to pull in. Let me go ahead and save this. I'm going to go out to my inquiry and I'm just going to go into the edit view where I can now quickly go add that new field that I added to the bills and adjustment screen. So I go to results. Here it is. So I'm going to come back out to my bills and adjustment view. Just one moment once this loads. And if I scroll over, right, here's that new field that I added to the bills and adjustment screen that's now visible in the list and I can start reporting on. So as you can see, this did not require any sort of coding. It doesn't require a technical skill set. With, just a short training session with anybody, right? We can get you guys empowered to be able to really manage the layout of your screen as well as add new fields. Pretty cool? I think so. It's probably one of my, favorite things that Acumatica has done with this release with the new modern UI. All right, so that's kind of concludes our glimpse of what's available within the modern UI across all screens, all modules within the application. We're going to jump now to talking about AI, right? I would be surprised if AI has not come up, right? And, in any organization, everybody now is trying to figure out how they're going to utilize AI to move their business forward, right? And Acumatica is doing the same, right? They have this AI first strategy as an organization where they are heavily focusing on practical, responsible, and industry specific AI, right? That solves real business problems that organizations like yourself are facing every day, right? And they're doing this by integrating AI into existing workflows, right? They're not creating these complex standalone features that require, another AI plugin to really work with it. It's all being built into the Acumatica core system. Now, as they're building AI into the core system, right, they are giving thought to ensuring that your data privacy, right, is secure. And they're doing that through using just native LLMs, right, that you would have set up that's where you have the ability to really secure your data so that your data is not just going out to the outside world that is then accessible, right, for other people to see and to use, right? And so through that data privacy, they're able to deliver immediate value through using intelligent advisors, okay, automations, and assistance for the purpose of making better decisions and more efficiencies. Okay, so there are some core principles that Acumatica is using as they're building out their AI. And I'm going to kind of take you through what those core principles are and some examples of those, right? As I mentioned before, they want to make sure that when they're building out their AI, that what they're doing, it's practical and people are finding value in it, right? So they are designing AI functionality to actually solve challenges like expense recognition, AP document recognition, right? Some of you guys might be using some of those features today. So even though Acumatica has had some of those features now for a couple of years, they are continuously improving upon those to make those better. Another area that they've designed to actually solve business challenges and to help with efficiency is anomaly detection. Okay. So, I'm sure everybody has people on their staff where at month end, right, they're doing a review of certain GL accounts to look for anomalies, right? Things that maybe, transactions where someone might have fat fingered something from $1,000 to $10,000 or even $100,000, right? Sales transactions where it didn't meet whatever the expected typical margins are. Another example of where people are probably spending time manually looking for those anomalies. Well, through Acumatica's AI, right, they've automated the system to find those anomalies for you. So again, things that Acumatica is doing is providing value, right, to businesses like yours. The data privacy aspect, right, that is paramount. Using private LLMs, keeping your customer data isolated from public models, right, and secure within your Acumatica instance is Acumatica's highest priority. Now, when they're integrating their AI features, they are building it into the current workflows. Okay, so examples of that we're going to look at is there is related items assistance, where it's going to be looking through your sales data and based off of what your customers are historically buying and buying together, there's going to be an assistant that can suggest that you add certain related items to others so that when you're manually inputting, you can suggest those items that the system has found that your customers are typically buying together. You can be proactive and you can suggest those to your customers as you're doing your order entry. Okay. Another area where you're going to see AI and integrate into some standard workflows is I have an example set up on a stock item where it's taking some information that you've built, that you've inputted into your stock item, and it can use that information along with going out online to actually build out a really nice product description. That this description can be used internally when maybe you're on a call with a customer and they want more details about the product. This description can be a description that's used and pushed up to your e-commerce site. But again, it's showing how Acumatica can use your data and do some searching on that to provide a really nice, streamlined, consistent product description. Acumatica is continuously building out industry-specific tools. So one of them is that related items assistant that I talked about. They also have coming, I'm not sure if it's going to be in 26R1, but it is going to be coming very soon, a sales assistant. Okay, where there's going to be a sales assistant that is actually going to help facilitate the order entry, as well as a sales assistant that you're going to be able to interact with. And you're going to be able to say, hey, for this customer, can you give me a rundown of their history? Give me their open orders, their open receivables, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to look at that customer holistically. And it's actually going to just put together a nice dashboard view of everything that you're looking for right on the fly. So that's another industry-specific assistant that Acumatica is in the process of building. If you're interested in learning more about that, we do have some videos from Acumatica where they can kind of demonstrate what that is going to look like. Now, the purpose of AI, right? It's not to replace people, right? It is to enhance and empower your users to be able to work smarter and more efficiently and get more done. So I know there's a lot of concerns out there when people think about AI that they think AI is going to replace humans. I don't believe it's going to replace humans. It's going to change how we work, right? It's going to allow us to work again smarter, not harder. And again, that's the mindset that Acumatica has, and that is always top of mind as they're building out these new features again. How can we make a user's job easier? How can we empower them with, being able to perform certain things just with a click of a button versus having to go and search and find all that information manually? So we're gonna now dive into some of the AI features. The first one I'm going to start with is the AP document recognition. Now, I know we have a lot of customers using it. We have a lot of customers and prospects here on the call that are not using it today. And like I said, Acumatica, every version, they are enhancing the way that it goes about with that document recognition, as well as even the functionality that's available within the process itself. So I'm going to navigate over to the incoming documents screen. And I always tell people, imagine that you have Acumatica set up with an email account that your vendors are emailing PDF documents to. Okay. And Acumatica has a job running that's looking for those documents that are getting emailed to that account. And as they come in, they're sitting in this incoming documents queue. Now, we have another job running that as documents are coming into this queue, right, there's a schedule that runs that's going to go ahead and it's going to read through these PDFs and it's going to determine, all right, who's the vendor? What's the dollar amount? What did you buy? Is this related to a project? Is it tied to a PO, right? It's looking through the document to try to determine and create as much of that transaction as it can. So I'm going to manually kick off the recognition process. Now, when I do that, when this completes, you're going to notice that just what we're seeing here in this grid-like view, this is going to update, right? It's going to have the vendor assigned and the amount of the invoice assigned that I'm then going to drill in to do a review on. So I'm going to tell it to recognize. Okay, so it just ran through the process. As I mentioned, you'll notice the vendor name or ID got added as well as the recognized amount. So I'm going to open this up and here's where we're going to get a view of the PDF that I can scroll through that was remitted. And I can resize this based on whatever resolution I would like to make that bigger or smaller. But more importantly, over here on the left-hand side, here's all the information as well as down in the grid that Acumatica filled in based off of what it found on that PDF document. So it found a vendor inside of Acumatica called Brand Glue, which when you click in the field, it will highlight where it found that value on the document. Okay. Same thing such as the date, the invoice number. I start getting down into my document details, right? And then here's where it's going to tell me, right, where it found all that information. Now, if it couldn't populate something, like you couldn't find it automatically, I can train the system so that it knows when it's brand glue, I can actually assign the right vendor to it. And that's where the AI portion of this really kicks in. The machine learning, the AI piece will remember that it saw this PDF in a previous transaction and that we mapped it to whatever vendor we end up selecting so that the next time, right, that PDF comes in, it knows who to assign that bill to. So again, this transaction was populated using initially OCR technology, which is very standard in any sort of document recognition feature, along with AI machine learning, where when it can't fully recognize it, it starts to learn the layout of the invoice and how that gets mapped into Acumatica. Now, once I've reviewed this, I can hit save and close. and this is going to actually create my AP transaction for me with all that information that got moved over, along with, let me just go ahead and save this, the file attachment that is automatically attached. Okay. So again, like I said, I know we have quite a few customers utilizing this today. I can, early on, I can tell you, Acumatica, it didn't do, as nearly good of a job as it does today. One with the document recognition, but now with that AI machine learning piece added in, right? You can train this so that it can recognize documents where, again, it may not be a one-to-one kind of match with the invoice and the field inside of Acumatica. So if you're interested in learning more about this, let us know. Your Acumatica license does come with 50 pages of document recognition. So it comes with enough where we can enable the feature for you, and we can allow you to try it out without having to make any sort of commitment. If it's something that you like and it works for your team, then what you can do is you can subscribe to a group of additional pages, which equates, pretty much to how many invoices you're going to be running through that document recognition process, and that's what you end up purchasing is some additional pages. But again, you can try it free of charge for 50 up to 50 pages a month. Now, on the expense recognition side, for the sake of time, I'm not going to actually take you through that, but it really works the same way, where if you own the expense management module, using your mobile phone, you can take a picture of that receipt and it's going to scan through the receipt to populate that expense transaction that was either made through a corporate card or your employee's own personal expenses. That ends up in payables, right, for a reimbursement. So again, if you're interested in learning more about that, please feel free to reach out. Okay, we're going to move on to the anomaly detection area next. And first, we're going to look at the built-in anomaly detection on the general ledger side of things. Right. So I have a couple screens flagged for ease of finding them. The first one is to analyze my accounting transactions. Okay. Now I already ran this process. I'm not going to run this now. This is not like a process that just takes 1 minute. Didn't take terribly long, right? But because it's going through all of your transactions in your general ledger, right, and looking at them and trying to pick out those anomalies, it does take a little bit of time to run, which is why we tell people, let's set this up on a schedule. It could be a daily schedule, weekly schedule, monthly schedule that runs typically after hours behind the scenes. But basically, you would come in here, right? And you would either manually run it, and you could still manually run it if you have it on schedule. Maybe you wanted, to run it more frequently this time, or you can come in here and manually initiate it. But this is what's going to kick off the system to go and analyze all of those accounting transactions. Now, once this process completes in this screen, there's actually a GL anomaly dashboard. So this is something, your accounting managers, finance managers, controllers, right? Even staff accountants, right? They can come in, they can monitor this GL anomalies dashboard that is bringing insight into all the transactions that Acumatica is flagging as an anomaly. Okay. So if this is a multi-company environment, it will tell you, first of all, how many companies, right, that it has pending anomalies that it detected, how many transactions currently need to be reviewed, okay, how many anomalies year to date there were, right, and you can see some this month, right, the top 10s and different classifications of accounts where it found those anomalies, right? So this is an out-of-the-box dashboard that is bringing visibility to those anomalies here in the general ledger. Again, all of these widgets are actionable, right? So if I wanted to get to see, well, what are those 24 unprocessed anomaly transactions, right? Here's the 24 transactions that it found, right? So if your dashboard is telling you, right, that you have some anomaly detections, then what I would recommend is that you go to this screen called Open Anomalies by Confidence. And when you come into here, actually, no, that's the one that I was just in, that I just drilled into. That gives you a whole list. I'm going to go to my review anomalies predictions. And in here, here's where we actually can take action on them. Now, this is for a specific period. And I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to go back to that open anomalies really quick. Because in here, I did create, I thought I created, yes, I created a pivot, okay, that is basically showing me the anomalies that are currently open. So it's those 24 anomalies. It's showing me a pivot of the different GL accounts that contain those anomalies and the period, right, that the transaction resides in. So based off of this information, I can now very effectively come in and review those anomaly predictions. So if I go to period 1 of 25 and I bring up my cash account 10200, okay, here is where I can see that anomaly that it detected. So it found a credit for over $4 million, right? Which again, it found that that is an unusual pattern for us to have a credit of that amount. Okay. So it flagged that. So I can drill into the transaction from here if I want to, so that I can review it, do some more research. This was actually a payment, right, to a supplier for that amount that it found that was an anomaly. And I either can mark it as valid, okay, so I can take this, mark it as valid, or maybe someone booked this to the wrong account, okay. I can actually do a reclassification transaction here. So this is probably more common if it's on the revenue or expense side where you would do that reclassification. So I'm actually going to jump over to the expense side. On my 50,000 account, I think I had some anomalies. Let me go look. In period 6. Okay. So here's one. Let's say that it was booked to the wrong account after I reviewed it. I can go and I can say, all right, I want to reclass this because someone coded it to the wrong GL account. So they coded it to 50,000. I can go ahead and I can change the account right from here to whatever it might need to be. Maybe it's controls, and I can process this. And this creates the journal transaction for me automatically, reclassifying it from equipment purchases to control purchases. And it takes that anomaly out of my list. Okay. So again, the system found all this for me, so I didn't have to go and do an audit and a reconciliation, right, of all my accounts. Acumatica did that for me. It identified which ones, were an anomaly, and now I'm just looking at that small subset of transactions and taking action on those through this functionality. Okay. So that is your GL anomalies, what that looks like and how you could use that. Another area this comes out of the box from Acumatica as an anomaly detection is actually called sales order margin analysis. I'm going to jump over here. And what the system is doing, it's detecting anomalies at the sales order line level for product that you're selling to your customers. Okay. Now, I created some save filters here of basically what the severity of the anomaly is. There's an entire list that you can look at all your transactions, where it will show you which ones it reviewed and marked as normal. Okay. If there is no anomaly severity, it's because there wasn't enough data for it to actually make a determination. So you need to have at least 10 records in the system for what it's analyzing. In this case, it's analyzing the inventory ID and what the typical margin is on that. If there's not enough transaction in the system, so a minimum of 10 records, excuse me, it eliminates that from the anomaly detection. And then I flagged what was medium, what was severe, so that I can focus on those. Right. So again, I can drill into the sales transaction. I can take a look at it, make sure we didn't have any sort of pricing issue again. Maybe someone put the decimal place in the wrong area, right? If I want to accept that, I can put comments in here, reviewed by whoever, X, and I can mark this for review, and then it will roll off of my anomaly detection. So again, this is another out of the box area where you have that anomaly detection built in. Now, the last one I'm just going to show you real quick for the sake of time is you can create. So Acumatica has some out of the box ones, like with the sales margin and the GL, but you can take any GI and you can turn on anomaly detection. So an example of that is this purchase items anomaly that I built. So I just built a quick GI that's showing me all my purchase line items. And in the generic inquiry tool set, I enabled the flag under interface options that I want to use this GI for the purpose of detecting anomalies. When you select that, it opens up this anomaly tab where you can tell it what fields you want it to evaluate, as well as that key data. So it's the inventory ID, right, that I want it to evaluate for a period of time, looking at the unit cost field. Okay. And I have this one set so that I would just run this on demand. You can have it run monthly, weekly, daily, automatically, or set it on a different schedule through the scheduling tool. Now, as a result of setting this up, if I go over now to my purchase item anomalies, again, I put some saved filters to be able to filter quickly on what it found as a medium severity or significant severity. Okay. And from within here, I can review the transactions that got flagged. I can make comments and mark them as reviewed so that they roll off of my list of items to look at. So this is where Acumatica, started out with anomaly detection in very specific areas, such as the GL and your sales margin, but then have expanded upon that to allow you to basically take a generic inquiry that you wrote and turn on that anomaly detection and decide what you want to analyze on any of the data within your system. Okay, so that's it for the anomaly detection. If you want to learn more about this, if you have some specific scenarios in mind that you want to talk about, please reach out to us and we can help guide you through that. I'm going to take us through one more area in relation to AI that has to do with how we're kind of automating a workflow within the system. Now, this workflow is going to be the creation of that item description, both the detailed description and the summary description. So I am using a private LLM, a large language model that we have set up in the system. So I created my connection, and then we have a prompt. We actually have a few prompts that we've created. We have one if you're using like a case management system. As part of your case management system, when you close it, you can require closure notes. Now, in the past, the owner of that case would have to key in, basically write up closure notes. What this prompt does is actually reads through all the communication within that case. So emails, tasks, notes, and it comes up with a suggested closure note based off of all that communication. Okay. This one here is actually doing some automatic replying to emails. It's actually, I should say, it's refining someone's reply to an email. And then we have our stock item description. This is the one we're going to look at today. It's applicable probably to most people here on the call, where in our instructions, right, we're telling the system or the AI assistant, right, what they need to do. Okay, so we're telling it, okay, you're an AI assistant, you're functioning as an experienced marketing, copywriter specializing in product descriptions for catalogs, e-commerce platforms, and marketing platforms. And so we start listing out the instructions and the information that it's going to use inside of Acumatica, as well as it can be using external information in conjunction with that, and then what the output needs to look like, what we're looking for, and where it's going to output to. Okay. So based off of how this is configured, when I go over to an inventory item, I'm going to go to this Acer laptop. And so again, currently it's looking at some of the data that's already been entered in here. And then, like I said, it can go out to the web and it can pull more information once it actually understands what this product actually is. And when I say generate description, it's going to update the description and the header for this item, as well as the detailed description in the description tab. Okay. So based off of the information that it found, it realizes that this was an Acer, right, 11.6 2-in-1 laptop. And then when I go to my description, here's the description that it wrote up. Now, if you want to again see what was there previously, I can undo this because I didn't save. And what was here previously is the item was just called an Acer laptop computer. And there was some information here, right? But it wasn't as detailed as what our AI agent created for us. And I'll click that again just so you can kind of see what the difference is. So again, this is an area that you can use an AI agent to kind of help facilitate the research and the write-up of your product descriptions. I'm just going to go ahead and save that, and that's what it's going to use going forward. So again, this is an example of how an AI assistant in the system can use data that someone is inputting, right? Along with information that might be found, out on the web. Bring that together to write a nice, in this case, streamlined description in just, a couple of seconds versus having somebody have to take time to write this and format it and do the research. Okay. So this kind of concludes what we're going to cover here for AI. Every release, I'm sure for, quite a few years out, we're going to see Acumatica enhancing AI with more assistants that are going to be automatic in the system, as well as more functionality for allowing you to configure your own assistants. Okay, so we have a few more minutes left, and we're just going to kind of look at just some random things that I think apply to probably most customers here on our call. First one is the inventory full text research, or full text search, not research. So if I go over to sales order, this also works on your purchasing documents. If you have items where you either have a very large item list, some of our customers have hundreds of thousands, millions of items, right? So through using this full text search, it is going to retrieve your item quicker when it's searching. Okay, so that's one thing that this does. The other thing is it's going to allow you to basically search pieces of the inventory item ID or name. So this can come in handy when you have a lot of items that are very similar, right? Maybe it's a different dimension or a different color or something like that. So an example of that I have is if I type in HOB, okay, you can see here, it didn't have to start with HOB, right? The item number or item name. It was somewhere in the middle. And then because this is dimensional, if I just start typing the dimension, it's going to continue to refine my search to allow me to quickly find my items when I'm doing that input. Now, customer IDs, vendor IDs, that's been working on the full text search for quite a while, but the inventory ID was an area where that was lacking and now is available in 25R2. Right? I am going to jump over into my AA customer where we're going to take a look at the activities. Now, the activities, for the most part look the same, right? A little bit different because it's modern UI, but where you're going to see some differences when I drill into an activity, they've reworked the activity screen. Okay. So before the activity screen was you had a header going all the way across, and then you would have the body of your activity down below. They've taken that header and they've streamlined that a bit to basically just, the typical information that someone would be recording on this type of activity. And everything else that was header level, they buried down here into this details tab. Okay, so you can still see it, you can still access it, change it, but it's less information for you to have to deal with on the screen. And then the description of your activity, which used to be down in the bottom half of the screen, is now here to the right of the screen. So I think it's an improvement from a usability perspective when it comes to working with activities. Okay, all the same functionality is still there, still have notes and files and things like that. On the receivable side, and I am going to navigate over to my print email and AR documents. So prior to 25 R2, if you were either emailing invoices for, let's say, a day that you're sending them all out on, if you were reprinting invoices, maybe it's for customers where, you're emailing them all their open invoices. When you would come in here to reprint and you were to select, right, all their invoices that you wanted to email, Acumatica would basically queue up an individual email for each of those. Okay. And they would be all individual files. You now have the flexibility to say, hey, I want to send every document that I'm selecting, I want to send it in the same email so that it doesn't, in this case, send out two emails. Okay. You can even take it one step further and you can say, instead of sending this as one email with two documents, I want you to basically take these two documents and combine them into one. So that's a very common request when you're dealing with, I would say, larger companies. A lot of times you're emailing this email to like a portal where they have like that document recognition built into it, and they're consuming that, and they want everything as either, one email or two emails, right? Before you didn't have that flexibility. Now you do. Okay. So if I go ahead and I process this, it's going to queue up one email. Okay. And even though I selected multiple documents, it's going to create one document in there. And I think I accidentally selected a customer where I didn't have it configured. I was really focused on the USA bartending. So let's go over to our all emails where we can see what was queued up. And if I open up this document and I go look at my file attachment, all worked out well, which it did. Here's where you can see it's one file with all of the individual documents consolidated into that. So definitely a feature that I know a lot of customers that I work with have been wanting. So you can take advantage of this starting in 25 R2. Okay. Real quickly on the construction side of things, if I go over to a construction project, so let me just come over here to projects, and I am going to pull up project TMR02. So when you're using projects, there's a lot of data, right, that can get tied to a project, as well as a lot of information that you're just capturing within the project that's available to you, these different tabs, side panels, and so on. Acumatica has really brought to kind of to the top, to the light, the most important information that kind of gets buried into a lot of these different tabs and side panels. They've brought that together under this project status dashboard. So you can access the project status dashboard from the project itself, or you can navigate here directly and set your customer and review where their project is at. So it's got some metrics built into it. Okay, gross profit, margins, if you're marking your project with a percentage complete, right? budgeted versus actual. So again, a lot of KPIs as to where you are with your project. Um, approvals, anything unpaid, right? AP, invoicing. And then on the left-hand side, you have the ability to still get to the details that you would have the ability to drill into from the project screen, just organized in a more efficient format. So for anybody using project or construction, I think this is a really big enhancement to basically having like one centralized hub for your project review as a project manager. All right, the last area that we're going to talk about real quick is Acumatica payments. So I know a lot of our customers are currently subscribed to Acumatica payments. We have customers who are in the process of evaluating that. So we'll talk about a few enhancements that are available now with Acumatica payments. I am going to put in this document number into my search to find this AR document really quickly. So when it comes to payment links that you can send out to your customers so that they can pay off of a document, in the past, you could only have payment links on document types of an invoice. Okay. With 25R2, you can include payment links and debit memos, as well as, I don't have it enabled here, but if you're using finance charges, you can have payment links on finance charges so that your customers can pay a debit memo, finance charge, as well as an invoice using the payment link functionality. So if I was to go ahead and print this invoice, okay, here's where you can see a payment link is now embedded into this debit memo. And like I said, the same would be for your finance charges if you were using that. So that's an additional feature coming out. The other thing is in your auto settlement, just type. So I would assume for most people who are using Acumatica payments, this is also true for other payment processors, such as like Repay or in eBiz. You do have the ability to import your transactions that settled with your processing center, right? It pulls those transactions in and it matches them up to the credit card transactions in Acumatica. Okay. Now, with Acumatica payments, that worked for transactions that were of a credit card type historically. In 25R2, when you run your import settlement batches, it will now try to automatically settle EFT/ACH payments. So if you are storing your customer's banking information on file and charging that versus a credit card, it will now pull those transactions in and it will settle those for you automatically. If for some reason those transactions get rejected, funds weren't available, okay? EFT, ACH is right. That works a little bit different than credit cards. They can't detect whether or not the funds are truly available when you process the transaction like they can with a credit card. So if the funds aren't available, it takes a day or two, right, for you to be made aware that that transaction was rejected. So with this import settlement, Acumatica has actually added this rejected amount column. So if the transaction was rejected, okay, you can easily identify that. And then you can drill into the transaction and there's a new action on the action menu of the payment where you actually can say, I want to reject it in Acumatica. And it basically voids that out. So I don't have any rejections that I can actually show. But again, I know that's a pain point for a lot of people who are using those the ACH processing, and when a transaction doesn't go through, right? It's challenging to try and reject that inside of Acumatica today, as well as be made aware of that rejection in a timely manner. So that's a feature that's been added. Okay. And then the last thing I want to mention on enhancements to Acumatica payments, if I come over to the processing center, There is a new preference here under payment links where you can attach document details as a PDF. So if you have an order that was 10 items and you just want to send your customer a payment link, when they click on the payment link, they can actually see a PDF copy of the invoice from Acumatica with all the document details. Okay. Today, they're really just seeing one lump sum number. They're not seeing all the transaction details. But if you want to provide your customer with those details, then you can go ahead and enable that. And when you create your payment link, it will send up those details. So again, another nice new feature that I think can help minimize questions from the customer coming back into your staff. So that's the last feature that we're looking at today. As I mentioned, there is a new feature release document that's between 200 to 300 pages long. So as you can imagine, there's a lot more features. They are broken out by different editions. So construction versus distribution versus manufacturing versus general, so that you can really, when you're looking at that document, focus on the areas that are really relevant and specific to your organization. So if you're interested in that, let us know. We can provide you with that link and you can download and take a look at everything that's included in this new release. So thank you for joining.